This is the Varghmir Saga, Chapter 4, Blood and Prophecy. When last we met, the harbor of Varghmir became a stage for ancient terrors. Sigrid Ravenvik sought sanctuary from the dark ships, only to find them at her very heels. Gravnar Skuldvein, lord of the restless dead, revealed Magnus Varghmir's terrible bargain. 20 years of peace bought with a promise that now demanded payment, a debt written in blood, sealed with souls. And at the heart of it all stood young Eirik, caught between his father's lies, his enemy's protection, and a raven's prophecy that grows darker with each passing hour. Today's saga is Blood and Prophecy, where secrets buried for 2 decades claw their way to the surface, where the price of truth is measured in lives, and where the raven's warning finally finds its mark in the most unexpected of ways. Draw close to the fire, steel your hearts for what is to come, and remember, in the north, all debts must be paid, and prophecy cares nothing for the wishes of men. 6 hours remain until sunset. The tale begins in the shadow of the great hall, where a father must choose between truth and damnation. The great hall of Varghmir had become a war council of the desperate. Around the long oak table sat enemies who had spent lifetimes learning to hate each other, now forced to breathe the same air, to speak of alliance in voices hoarse with barely restrained fury. Magnus sat in his high seat, but the carved wolves that adorned its arms seemed to mock him now, their wooden eyes reflecting his shame. To his right sat Sigrid Ravenvik, her midnight cloak pooled around her like spilled ink, her fingers tracing patterns on the table's scarred surface. The old seer stood in the shadows near the hearth, her bone trinkets clicking softly as she swayed to some rhythm only she could hear. And everywhere the smell of fear hung thick as smoke from wet wood. "Speak, Magnus," Sigrid commanded, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. "Your son deserves to know what bargain you struck with the dead. We all deserve to know the price of your 20 years of peace." Eirik stood behind his father's chair, his hand resting on the pommel of his axe. The weight of it felt familiar, comforting, but he knew no weapon forged by mortal hands could cut through the web of lies and secrets that had ensnared his family. "Father," he said quietly, "the truth, all of it." Magnus aged 10 years in the space of a heartbeat. His shoulders, broad enough to bear the weight of a clan's hopes, seemed to bow beneath an invisible burden. When he spoke, his voice carried the hollow echo of a man confessing his sins to the grave. "It was 21 years ago," he began. "You were but a babe in your mother's arms, Eirik. The first dark ships came then, as they come now. Black sails on the eastern wind, death in their holds. But then they numbered in the hundreds, a fleet so vast it darkened the horizon from north to south. The hall fell silent save for the crackling of the hearth fire. Even Kervold, that mad priest of ravens, leaned forward to hear these words he had waited decades to witness spoken aloud. They came not as raiders," Magnus continued, "but as harbingers of something worse. Their lord, Gravnar Skuldvein, though he wore a different face then, spoke of his master's will. The serpent beneath had grown tired of the small battles between men, tired of watching mortals squabble over scraps of land and fleeting glory. He would cleanse the world, start fresh with servants who would never question, never rebel, never die." "The other clans?" Sigrid asked, though she feared the answer. "Steelhold fell first, Jarl Grim the Smith, and all his line, taken in a single night, their great forges cold, their halls empty, save for the stench of old death." Magnus's hand moved to the silver amulet at his throat, a hammer wrapped in runes that Eirik had never seen his father touch before. Stormfjord lasted 3 days. Ivar the far-traveled, who had sailed to the edge of the world itself, His long ships burned on the beach, while his warriors fought shadows that could not be killed. Eirik felt the blood drain from his face. All of them. Every clan. All save two, Magnus replied. Ravenvik held their mountain fastness for a full month. Morgrim's ravens brought word of each fall, each slaughter, until we alone remained in the north, the last two clans of free men, watching the darkness gather around us like the tide. And then Sigrid pressed, though her knuckles were white where she gripped the table's edge. Magnus stood and walked to the great window that looked out over the harbor. Below, the dark ships waited like patient predators, their black hulls drinking in the afternoon light. Then Gravnar came to me under a banner of parley. He spoke of terms, of a bargain that might save what remained of our people. He offered me 20 years. 20 years to raise sons who might be stronger than their fathers. 20 years to forge weapons that might cut deeper than mortal steel. 20 years to find some way to stand against what was coming. The price? The old seer's voice was soft as falling leaves, but it carried to every corner of the hall. Magnus turned from the window, and Eirik saw tears on his father's weathered cheeks. A life freely given when the 20 years ended. Not taken in battle, not stolen in the night, but offered willingly by one who understood the weight of sacrifice. Whose life? Eirik asked, though he already knew. Mine, Magnus said. I swore to give myself to his fleet when the time came due, to serve in his army of the dead until the stars burned cold and the last mountain crumbled to dust. He laughed, bitter and broken. I thought I was clever. I thought 20 years would be enough to find another way, to break the bargain somehow. I was a young fool who believed in heroes and happy endings. Sigrid leaned back in her chair, understanding dawning in her ice-blue eyes. But Gravnar didn't come for you today. He came for Eirik. The bargain was clear, a life of value, a soul worth taking. When I made the pact, my life was worth something. I was young, strong, the hope of my people. But now, Magnus gestured to himself, to the gray in his beard, the lines around his eyes. Now I am an old man, worn thin by years and secrets. My son, however, has become everything you once were, Gravnar Skuldvein finished, his voice echoing through the hall, though no door had opened. The Death Lord stood in the shadows near the great hearth, his pale form seeming to absorb the firelight rather than reflect it. Young, strong, burning with unfulfilled purpose. A prize worth 20 years of patience. Magnus spun toward the apparition, his sword singing as it cleared its sheath. How did you enter your hall uninvited? Gravnar smiled, showing teeth like tombstone marble. I am here by right of ancient law, Magnus. When a debt comes due, the creditor may claim it anywhere, from anyone. Your walls cannot keep me out any more than your words can wish me away. The debt is mine, Magnus snarled. Take me and be done with it. Ah, but that is where you misunderstand the nature of our bargain. Gravnar glided forward, his feet making no sound on the wooden floor. I promised you 20 years of peace in exchange for a life of value. Your life had value then. It has little now. Your son's life, however, he gestured toward Eirik with one pale hand, burns bright as a forge fire. The oath he swore to the ravens, the blood he has not yet spilled, the destiny that calls to him, all of it makes his soul a treasure beyond price. Eirik stepped forward, his young face hard with determination. And if I refuse, if I break my father's bargain, then the 20 years of peace end, and my master's patience expires with them. Gravnar spread his arms wide, encompassing the hall, the harbor, the entire world beyond. Every soul in the northern lands will feed the hunger of the deep. Men, women, children, all will serve in the endless fleet, but their service will be unpleasant. Broken spirits make poor warriors, after all. There must be another way. Sigrid said, rising from her chair. Some other payment the darkness would accept. Gravnar turned his attention to her, and Eirik saw something flicker in those dead eyes, something that might have been interest, or amusement, or hunger. The daughter of Morgrim speaks wisdom, the Death Lord mused. There is always another way, for those clever enough to find it, and strong enough to pay its price. What way? Eirik demanded. Trial by combat, as is the ancient right of warriors. Gravnar smiled, and the temperature in the hall seemed to drop by 10 degrees. If the debt can be paid in blood rather than service, then blood shall suffice. But not just any blood, the blood of the one who matters most. He gestured towards Sigrid, and Eirik's heart stopped in his chest. The daughter of Ravenvik has claimed protection over you, young wolf. She has bound her fate to yours by ancient law and elder magic. If she can defeat my champion in single combat, then the debt is paid, and your people go free. If she falls, he shrugged, then both your soul and hers join my service, and the bargain is doubly satisfied. No, Eirik said immediately. I will fight your champion myself. You cannot, Kervald interjected, speaking for the first time since the Death Lord's arrival. The terms are clear. Only one who stands outside the original bargain may serve as proxy. You are the debt. You cannot pay it yourself. The priest speaks truth, Gravnar agreed. But choose quickly. The sun sinks toward the horizon, and my patience has limits. Sigrid stood, her hand moving to the sword at her hip. I accept the terms. Name your champion. My lady, no. Eirik reached for her, but she stepped away from his touch. I know what I do, Eirik Varghmir. I know the price and I know the stakes. Her eyes met his, and in their depths he saw something that made his soul ache. My brother died because of secrets and lies between our clans. I will not let you die for the same reason. Gravnar clapped his pale hands together, and the sound echoed like thunder in the confined space. How refreshing. A warrior who understands sacrifice. Very well, daughter of ravens. You shall face my champion at sunset in single combat to the death. If you win, the debt is paid and your people go free. If you lose, his smile was terrible. Well, the dead have eternity to learn regret. Who is your champion? Magnus asked. Someone you know well, Gravnar replied. Someone whose death you carry on your conscience, whose blood cries out for vengeance from the bottom of the sea. He raised one hand and shadows began to gather in the center of the hall, swirling like smoke given substance. From within that darkness stepped a figure that made Sigrid cry out in shock and Eirik reach instinctively for his weapon. It was a young man, tall and strong, with golden hair and eyes like winter sky. He wore the armor of Ravenvik, and at his throat gleamed a silver pendant identical to the one Sigrid wore. When he spoke, his voice carried the hollow echo of the grave. Hello, sister, the dead thing said. Have you missed me? Bjorn, Sigrid whispered, the word torn from her throat like a piece of her soul. Oh, gods! Bjorn! The revenant that had once been her brother smiled, but there was no warmth in it, no recognition. I am to be your opponent, it seems. How poetic, brother against sister, the living against the dead. Tell me, Sigrid, do you truly believe you can kill me twice? You are not my brother, she said, but her voice shook. You are a shadow wearing his face. Am I? Bjorn tilted his head like a curious child. I remember our childhood, sister. I remember teaching you to use a sword in the practice yard. Remember the tears you wept when our mother died. Remember the night before my last voyage when you begged me not to go. His smile widened. I remember the blade that took my life and the face of the man who held it. All eyes turned to Magnus, who had gone white as fresh snow. I never, didn't you? The dead Bjorn stepped closer, and with each step, ice began to form on the wooden floor beneath his feet. Magnus Varghmir, Jarl of Wolves and Keeper of Secrets. Tell them, old man. Tell them how you lured me to that lonely shore, how you spoke of alliance and brotherhood while your blade waited in the shadows. He lies, Magnus said, but the words rang hollow. Do I? Bjorn's laugh was like the sound of ice breaking on a winter lake. Then tell me, father of lies, how do you explain the raven that guided me to that meeting? How do you explain the message that bore your seal, your words, your promise of peace between our clans? The old seer stepped forward, her pale eyes fixed on Magnus with terrible intensity. The message, she said slowly, the message you sent to draw him out. What did it say? Magnus opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. No words came. I remember every word, Bjorn said softly. Come alone to Seal Point at midnight. Bring no weapons, no guards, no witnesses. The time has come to end the bloodshed between our peoples. By blood and steel, by earth and sea, let us forge a peace that will last forever. Eirik felt as if the floor had fallen away beneath his feet. Those words, he knew those words. They were part of the oath he had sworn, the vow that bound him to his clan and his honor. But hearing them spoken by this creature of shadow and ice, they sounded like a curse. Father, he said quietly, is it true? Did you kill Sigrid's brother? For a long moment Magnus said nothing. Then slowly he nodded. I did, he whispered. God forgive me. I did. The admission hit the hall like a lightning strike. Sigrid drew her sword in one fluid motion, its blade singing as it cleared its sheath. Eirik stepped between them, his own weapon raised. But he did not know whom he was protecting, his father or the woman who had risked everything to save him. Why? Sigrid's voice was deadly quiet, more terrifying than any scream of rage. Why did you murder my brother? Magnus looked at her across the space that separated them, across the years of lies and the ocean of blood, and spoke the truth at last. Because I had to, he said. Because Bjorn had discovered the truth about the dark ships, about my bargain with Gravnar. He threatened to expose everything, to rally the clans against me. He would have destroyed the only chance our people had to survive. So you killed him to keep your secret safe, Sigrid said. It was not a question. I killed him to keep our people safe, Magnus corrected. The bargain gave us 20 years, Sigrid. 20 years to grow strong, to prepare, to find another way. If Bjorn had spoken, if he had revealed what I had done, the other clans would have turned on us. We would have fought each other while the darkness gathered, and when it came at last, we would have stood alone and fallen like wheat before the scythe. Noble words, the dead Bjorn said, his voice dripping with mock admiration. But tell me, uncle, did your 20 years of preparation make you ready for this moment? Are you strong enough now to face what you postponed? Magnus had no answer. I thought not, Bjorn continued. But how fortunate that my sister has volunteered to clean up your mess. Tell me, Sigrid, are you prepared to fight the brother you loved? To strike down the boy who taught you everything you know about war? Sigrid's blade did not waver. You are not my brother. My brother died with honor intact. You are just an echo of death wearing his face. Perhaps, Bjorn agreed, but I have all his memories, all his skill, all his knowledge of how you fight. I know every move you will make before you make it, every weakness you try to hide, every fear that keeps you awake at night. He drew his own blade, a sword of black ice that seemed to drink light, and I have something he never did, the hunger of the grave, the strength of the restless dead, and an eternity of patience. Gravnar watched this exchange with evident satisfaction, his pale form seeming to grow more solid with each moment of pain and conflict in the hall. Such beautiful hatred, he murmured. Such exquisite suffering. My master will be pleased with this offering. But it was Eirik who stepped forward now, his young face blazing with determination and something else, something that might have been understanding. The combat, he said. When does it begin? At sunset, Gravnar replied. In the traditional manner, a circle drawn in the earth, witnessed by representatives of both clans, fought to the death with blade and blade alone. Eirik nodded, his mind racing. The sun hung low in the western sky now, perhaps 2 hours from the horizon. 2 hours to find some way to save Sigrid from a battle she could not win. 2 hours to unravel 20 years of lies and secrets. 2 hours to fulfill a prophecy he was only beginning to understand. There will be witnesses, he said carefully. From both clans, of course. The ancient laws require it, and if the combat is interrupted, if some unforeseen circumstance prevents its completion. Gravnar smiled, sensing a trap but amused by the attempt. Then the original bargain stands, and your soul becomes forfeit. Why do you ask, young wolf? Do you plot some desperate gambit? I ask, because I want to understand the rules, Eirik replied. Because a warrior should know the field of battle before the fight begins. Wise, Gravnar agreed. Very wise. But know this. My champion cannot be defeated by mortal strength or mortal cunning. He has already died once. Death holds no fear for him now. Your lady faces an enemy who cannot tire, cannot bleed, cannot know pain or doubt or mercy. Then why offer the combat at all? Sigrid challenged. Why not simply take what you came for? Because, Gravnar said softly, suffering freely chosen is always sweeter than suffering imposed. When you fall, and you will do so knowing that you chose this path, that you walked willingly into your doom. That knowledge will season your soul like salt seasons meat, making it all the more savory for my master's appetite. The hall fell silent. Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying with it the salt scent of the sea, and something else, the smell of ice and old graves, of things that should lie quiet, but walked instead beneath foreign stars. It was then that Eirik heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it, so familiar he almost dismissed it, the cry of a raven calling from somewhere high above the hall. He looked up, following the sound, and saw a single black bird perched on one of the great beams that supported the roof. It was watching him with bright, intelligent eyes, the same eyes that had warned him of prophecy beneath the midnight sky. The first blood you spill will not be your enemies. The words echoed in his mind as he stared at the bird, and suddenly, terribly, he began to understand, not just the prophecy, but the purpose behind it. Not just the warning, but the weapon it represented. Father, he said quietly, never taking his eyes from the raven, the blade you used to kill Bjorn, where is it now? Magnus frowned. In my private chambers. Why? The blood on it. Bjorn's blood. You never cleaned it, did you? You kept it as a reminder of your shame. Eirik, what are you? Answer me. The command rang out with such authority that even Gravnar looked surprised. The blood, is it still there? Yes, Magnus admitted. Dried and black, but still there. I could never bring myself to clean it away. Eirik smiled, and for the first time since the dark ships arrived, it was a smile of genuine triumph. Then I know how to win this fight, he said. Before anyone could stop him, he turned and ran from the hall, leaving behind a roomful of confused faces and one very interested raven. His feet flew across the wooden floors of the great house, up the stairs to his father's private chambers, through the door that had always been forbidden to him as a child. The room was sparse, almost monastic in its simplicity. A bed, a chest for clothes, a small table with a single chair, and there, hanging on the wall in a place of dishonor, was his father's old sword, the blade that had taken Bjorn Ravenvik's life. Eirik lifted it from its hooks with reverent care. The steel was good, well forged. But it was not the metal he was interested in. There, along the fuller of the blade, were the stains his father had spoken of, dark spots that had once been bright red, the lifeblood of a young man who had died for the crime of learning too much too soon. Bjorn's blood, Eirik whispered, the brother's blood that flows in the sister's veins. He understood now why the raven had warned him, why the prophecy spoke of blood that was not his enemy's. Sigrid was not his enemy, had never been his true enemy. She was his ally, his protector, perhaps something more. And the blood of her brother is her blood as well, he finished aloud. The plan formed in his mind like a vision, terrible and perfect and necessary. He would not let Sigrid face her undead brother alone. He would not let her die for his father's sins, for debts that were not hers to pay. But the combat had rules, ancient laws that even the dead must follow, unless those rules were broken first. He ran back to the hall, the blood-stained sword in his hands, arriving just as the sun touched the western horizon. Gravnar stood near the great doors, preparing to lead them all outside to the killing ground he had chosen. Bjorn waited beside him, that terrible mockery of life, wearing a dead man's face. But it was Sigrid who drew Eirik's attention. Sigrid standing alone near the great hearth, her own blade naked in her hands, her face set with the grim acceptance of one who goes willingly to her death. "My lady," Eirik called out, and every head in the hall turned toward him. "Catch!" He threw his father's sword, sent it spinning through the air toward her. She caught it instinctively, her warrior's reflexes faster than thought, and the moment her fingers closed around its grip, Eirik spoke the words that would change everything. "By blood and steel, by earth and sea, I claim the ancient right of kinship. The blood on that blade is the blood of your brother, blood that flows in your veins as well. By that blood, I name you sister in spirit, if not in flesh, and by that naming, I share in your battle." Gravnar snarled, his pale face twisting with rage. "You cannot. The laws of combat are clear," Eirik interrupted. "If the combatants share blood, then the combat may be shared as well. It is the oldest law of the warrior clans, older than your bargains, older than your master's hunger. But they do not share blood," Gravnar began. "They do now," the old seer said softly, stepping forward with something like wonder in her pale eyes. "The boy has claimed kinship through the blood of the blade, through the life that was taken and the life that remains. It is an ancient right, rarely invoked, but recognized by law and tradition." Sigrid stared at the sword in her hands, at the dark stains along its edge, and understanding dawned in her eyes, like the first light of morning. "Brother blood," she whispered. "You've made me your sister through my brother's death. If you'll have me," Eirik said simply. For answer, she raised the blood-stained blade and drew its edge across her palm, letting her own blood mingle with the ancient stains. Then she held it out to him, and he did the same, feeling the bite of steel, the warmth of flowing blood, the weight of oaths sworn in the old way. "Blood calls to blood," Sigrid said, speaking the ritual words. "Life answers life. What was divided is now joined. What was separate is now one, by blood and steel," Eirik replied, completing the ceremony. "By earth and sea," Gravnar screamed, a sound like ice breaking, like the wind through empty tombs, like the death cry of hope itself. But even as he raged, Eirik could see the calculation in his dead eyes, the cold assessment of new possibilities. "Very well," the Death Lord said at last. "2 against 1, if that is your wish. But know this, my champion is still a creature of death and shadow, still possessed of strength no mortal weapon can match. You have only doubled your offering to the grave." "Perhaps," Eirik agreed, "but we have also doubled our chances." The dead Bjorn smiled, and ice began to form on the floor around his feet. "Sister, brother, how touching that you will die together. I promise to make your suffering equal." But as they prepared to leave the hall, as the sun sank lower toward its appointment with the horizon, the raven on the roof beam cried out one final time. And in that cry, Eirik heard something new. Not warning, but promise. Not prophecy, but hope. The first blood he would spill would not be his enemies. But perhaps, in the end, that would be exactly what was needed. The combat circle had been drawn in the earth outside the great hall, marked with stones and blessed with the old words that made it sacred ground. Representatives from both clans stood as witnesses. Astrid for Varghmir, pale and frightened, but determined to see her brother's choice through to its end. Kervald for Ravenvik, his mad eyes glittering with anticipation of the carnage to come. The dark ships waited in the harbor like patient vultures, their crews watching from the decks with the inhuman stillness of the long dead. And above it all, ravens circled, not just one now, but dozens, their cries filling the air with prophecy and warning and something that might have been song. Gravnar stood at the circle's edge, his pale form seeming to drink the last light of the dying day. "The terms are clear," he announced. "Combat to the death, blade against blade, until only the living or the dead remain standing. No quarter asked, no quarter given, no interference from those who watch." Eirik and Sigrid took their positions on one side of the circle, their borrowed blade gleaming dully in the twilight. Across from them, the thing that wore Bjorn's face hefted its weapon of black ice, its dead eyes reflecting nothing but endless hunger. "Are you ready to die, sister?" the Revenant asked conversationally. "Are you prepared to join me in the cold halls beneath the waves?" "I am prepared to send you back to whatever hell spawned you," Sigrid replied, "and this time you'll stay dead." The dead Bjorn laughed. "We shall see." The sun touched the horizon, painting the sky red as fresh blood. Gravnar raised one pale hand, and the combat began. What followed was not a battle but a dance, a deadly, graceful, terrible dance performed by masters of their craft. The undead Bjorn moved like liquid shadow, his blade tracing patterns in the air that seemed to bend light around them. But Sigrid matched him, move for move, her own sword singing as it parried and struck, her years of training evident in every perfectly timed counterattack. Eirik fought beside her, their movements synchronized, as if they had trained together for years rather than minutes. When she attacked high, he went low. When he pressed forward, she covered his retreat. They fought as one warrior with 4 arms, and for a moment, just a moment, it seemed they might actually win. Then Bjorn's blade found its mark. The sword of black ice slid between Sigrid's ribs like a whisper of winter wind, piercing her heart with surgical precision. She gasped, blood frothing on her lips, and collapsed to the earth of the combat circle. "Sigrid!" Eirik's cry echoed across the harbor, raw with anguish and fury. "And so it ends," Gravnar said with satisfaction. "The debt is paid in full." But even as he spoke, even as Eirik knelt beside Sigrid's fallen form, the ravens above began to cry out in voices like thunder, and the old seer, watching from beyond the circle, smiled with terrible understanding. "Not yet," she whispered. "The prophecy is not yet fulfilled." Eirik lifted his father's sword, the blade still stained with the mingled blood of 2 who had become siblings in the old way. His eyes fixed on the undead thing that had once been Bjorn, on the creature that had stolen Sigrid's life, and he felt something break inside his chest, not his heart, but something deeper. Some final barrier between the boy he had been and the man he was becoming. "You want blood?" he said quietly, his voice carrying across the circle with deadly promise. "Then let me give you blood." He turned the sword's point toward himself. "Eirik, no!" Magnus's voice rang out, but his son was beyond hearing. "The first blood I spill will not be my enemies," Eirik said, speaking to the ravens, to the watching dead, to the gods themselves. "But perhaps it will be the blood that matters most." And with that, he drove his father's blade deep into his own heart. End of chapter 4. Next chapter. Preview. In spilling his own blood, Eirik has broken every rule of combat and prophecy alike. But some sacrifices open doors that should remain closed, and some deaths are merely beginnings. In the seer's secret, the true nature of the raven's prophecy will be revealed, and the old seer's greatest secret will change everything. If you wish to walk further into the saga, subscribe and return when the raven calls again.